When my father died, he left his business to my brother, the business I had built from the ground up. The business I had run for 11 years while my brother collected a salary and took credit in family photos. At the will reading, my brother smiled at me from across the table, like he'd won something. I smiled back. Then the attorney cleared his throat and said, "There is one additional document." My brother's smile didn't disappear slowly. It disappeared all at once, like a light switching off. Because what the attorney placed on that table didn't just change the inheritance, it changed everything my brother thought he understood about who actually owned what. My name is Diana Mercer. I'm 44 years old. I was adopted at 3 days old by a couple who never once made me feel like that word, adopted, meant anything less than fully theirs. My father used to say, family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. He said it so often it became almost a family joke. Now I understand he wasn't just saying it. He was building his entire estate plan around it. This is the story of a business, a brother who never quite accepted me, and a father who turned out to be 10 steps ahead of everyone in that room. My parents, Robert and Ellen Mercer, adopted me in the spring of 1980. They had been trying to have children for several years without success, and when the opportunity came through a family connection, they said yes immediately. Mom always told that story with a particular brightness, how they got the call on a Tuesday and by Friday I was home. 2 years later, my mother became pregnant naturally. My brother, Nathan, was born in the summer of 1982. I want to be careful here, because this story isn't about my parents failing me. They didn't. My mother loved me with the particular fierce devotion of someone who had waited and hoped. My father was consistent, present, and warm in his quiet engineer's way. They never treated Nathan and me differently. Not openly, not in ways I could point to and say, "There, that's the moment." But Nathan knew. Children always know the things adults think they're hiding. From a young age, Nathan had a way of using the word real that was never quite accidental. Your real parents. Your real family. Said lightly, said with a kind of casual cruelty that deniability made worse. When I told my parents, Nathan would say I misunderstood. Maybe I did. I stopped mentioning it after a while. As we got older, the dynamic settled into something cooler. We were polite. We were civil at family events. We were never close. Nathan went to college for business, came back with confident opinions about everything, and slid into a role at Dad's company, Mercer Industrial Supply, a mid-sized distribution business Dad had built over 30 years, with the ease of someone who assumed it was always going to be his. I had been working there since I was 22, started in the warehouse, moved to logistics, eventually became operations manager, then general manager. I knew every supplier, every contract, every employee by name. I knew which clients needed calls before invoicing and which ones paid late every quarter without fail. I knew the business the way you know something you've spent your adult life inside. Nathan knew it the way you know something you've always assumed you'd inherit. For 11 years, I ran Mercer Industrial Supply in all but title. Dad was present. He came in most mornings, made decisions on major accounts, kept relationships with the oldest clients. But the day-to-day operations, the staffing, the vendor negotiations, the systems that kept the whole thing moving, that was me. Nathan had a role, Director of Business Development, which in practice meant he attended trade shows, took clients to dinner, and generated a modest stream of new accounts each year. He was good at the social side of the business. He was charming, funny, easy to like. He just wasn't interested in the hard structural work that kept a business actually functioning. Dad saw this clearly. He never said it directly. That wasn't his way. But there were signs. When a major decision needed making, he called me. When a crisis happened, a supplier collapsed, a key employee quit, a client threatened to walk, my phone rang first. Nathan's phone rang when there was a dinner to attend. I told myself this was fine. Dad was still running the company. The title question would resolve itself eventually. I didn't push for recognition because the work itself was satisfying and because I trusted my father implicitly. What I didn't know was that Dad had been talking to attorneys for years. 3 years ago, Dad was diagnosed with a aggressive form of lymphoma. He told us on a Sunday evening, sitting at the kitchen table where we'd eaten 1,000 meals, with the same calm directness he brought to everything. He explained the diagnosis, the treatment plan, the prognosis. He answered questions. He did not cry. Mom cried. I cried. Nathan sat very still. The following months were hard in the particular way that watching a strong person become diminished is hard. Dad continued coming to work as long as he could. First full days, then half days, then occasional mornings. He lost weight. He tired easily. But his mind stayed sharp almost until the very end, which was both a gift and its own kind of difficulty. During that period, Nathan began positioning himself visibly. More time at the office. More conversations with key clients, introducing himself as the future of the company. He had business cards printed that said, President-elect. I saw one on a supplier's desk and felt something cold move through me. I said nothing. It wasn't my place to say anything. Not yet. Dad passed away 14 months after his diagnosis. He was at home, which is what he'd wanted. Mom was with him, and I was with him. Nathan arrived 2 hours after. The funeral was full. 30 years of business relationships, community connections, employees past and present. People stood outside the church because there weren't enough seats. I gave the eulogy. Nathan sat in the front row and wept in a way that was visible from the back of the room. 2 weeks after the funeral, we gathered at the offices of Patterson and Lloyd, the firm that had handled my father's legal affairs for 20 years. Mom was there, Nathan and his wife, me, and a few extended family members who had been mentioned as minor beneficiaries. The senior partner, a man named Gerald Patterson who had known my father for decades, conducted the reading. He was methodical, precise, going through the personal assets first, the house to Mom, personal accounts divided, smaller bequests to relatives. Then he came to the business. Mercer Industrial Supply, Patterson read, including all assets, accounts receivable, real property, and goodwill, is hereby bequeathed to Nathan Robert Mercer. The room was very quiet. Nathan exhaled slowly beside his wife. His hand found hers on the table. Across from me, his wife glanced at me with an expression I still think about, not triumphant, almost apologetic, like she knew something I didn't. I kept my face still. I had prepared myself for this possibility. I thought I had prepared myself for this possibility. Nathan looked at me then, and he smiled. It was the same smile from childhood, light, deniable, carrying something underneath it that only I could read. I looked back at him calmly. Patterson cleared his throat. There is one additional document, he said. The room shifted. Nathan's smile flickered. Patterson opened a second folder. Thicker than the first. Official. With the kind of careful organization my father applied to everything that mattered. 7 years ago, Patterson began, Robert Mercer established a separate legal entity, Mercer Holdings, LLC. This entity holds a controlling interest in Mercer Industrial Supply, representing 67% of the company's voting shares, along with 3 commercial properties associated with the business operations. Nobody spoke. The sole member and controlling owner of Mercer Holdings LLC is Diana Ellen Mercer. Nathan's wife made a small sound. Nathan himself said nothing. His face had gone very still in a way I had never seen before. Not angry yet, just processing. The way a computer looks when it's running something too large for its memory. Patterson continued reading. My father had structured the holdings company carefully, intentionally, with legal precision that made it airtight. The business Nathan had just inherited was real. He owned 33% of the operating shares, enough to draw a salary, enough to have a role. But controlling interest, the actual power to make decisions about the company's future, its sale, its direction, that was mine. Had been mine, legally, for 7 years. Patterson set down the document and looked at the room over his glasses. There is also a letter, he said, which Mr. Mercer asked to be read aloud. Patterson unfolded 2 pages in my father's handwriting. His voice was steady and professional. but I could see he was moved. He had known my father a long time. To my family, the letter began. If you are hearing this, then I have run out of time to say these things in person, which I regret. I was always better at doing than saying. I hope what I did speaks clearly enough. Nathan, I love you. You have gifts, real ones. You connect with people easily, you open doors, you make rooms warmer just by being in them. These are not small things. The business needs them. I hope you'll continue to bring them, but a business is not just relationships. It is systems, discipline, and the willingness to do the hard invisible work that nobody photographs. For 11 years, your sister has done that work. She knows this company better than anyone alive, including me in my final years. I am leaving Nathan the title because he expects it, and because some battles are not worth having. I am leaving Diana the control because she has earned it, and because I trust her judgment completely. Diana. Patterson paused briefly. You were mine from the third day of your life. Not from blood, from choice. Every day after that was also a choice, and I made it gladly, every single time. I hope you never doubted that. I should have said it more. Patterson folded the letter. The room was completely silent. Nathan stared at the table. His wife had her hand on his arm. My mother was crying quietly, the way she cried, privately, turned slightly away. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that the letter hadn't already said better. Nathan and I have had difficult conversations since that day. Some of them went badly. Some of them went better than I expected. We are not close. We may never be close. But we are finding a way to work together that is professional and occasionally almost warm. I run the company. He handles client relationships and new business development. It turns out the structure my father designed wasn't just legally clever, it was actually correct. We each do what we're genuinely good at. The business is doing well. What I think about most, though, isn't the business or the inheritance or the legal structure my father spent years quietly building. What I think about is a man who, from the third day of my life, made a choice. And then kept making it, every day, for 44 years, without ever needing credit for it. He said family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. He showed up, every single day, in every way that mattered, and in the end, he made sure I knew it, not just in words, but in the only language he'd ever really spoken. Careful, thorough, completely his own. That's everything. That was always everything. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments. Do you believe family is about blood or about choice? And if you're new here, subscribe. Every week, a new story about the people who show up, the people who don't, and the love that quietly outlasts both.